In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. To view remotely from a computer, please use the link in the agenda to join the public meeting webinar. There's also instructions to do so via telephone. The agenda lists all of the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items may not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. So before we get to public comment, I just wanted to make a point. Ellen, the assistant town clerk, reached out and asked if we had any meeting minutes. I told her, I don't know, because I didn't do the meeting minutes. So we apparently need to do meeting minutes. I've taken some notes, but they're not like verbatim. So I don't know how we want to handle this. All I know is that I am a volunteer and I am not doing it. And Renee is a volunteer and she's going to have to do it. If somebody wants to go back and listen to the meetings, I'm happy to have them do that. But like, I just do not have the bandwidth at this moment to go back and make meeting minutes for all of that stuff. However, I do think that we should keep meeting minutes for today. And so I am taking notes, and these will be more detailed notes. And then I will scan them and send them to whoever wants them so that we can have meeting minutes.
Well, we don't really want them in our office, but we will do them, Tony.
Okay. I just I don't know how much time people think I have.
We will look at the notes that you have tonight. Yeah, we'll get them done somehow.
Okay.
I thought, Tony, Laura said she would do the first one. I actually thought she was going to do all of them, but I don't think
that's all right.
She thought that. So
no, we'll figure it out. All right. There is no one on here for public comment other than the people I anticipated being here. That being said, anybody have any public comments they'd like to make?
Did you see Ezzy joined?
Jean for coming to step into Evan's shoes.
I did send 2 emails, one to just Jean, and then I sent another one to both Chris and Jean as well. Neither responded.
Jean's here, right? Or
yep.
I think.
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Oh.
It looks like you're sealing.
This will be exciting and riveting, Jean. This will be the highlight of your day.
Is that the opening of your improv act, Tony?
Yes. Okay. If there are no public comments, then let's move on to new business. Jean, you're the representative from the Finance Committee. That's the new business. Do you have anything you want to add? I actually don't even know what you look like. So
I know.
I
don't have a camera on my computer.
Oh, that's fine. Anything else you want to add? Stuff from Finance Committee, Evan's input. One of the things that we had talked about after Evan left was having somebody do a forensic audit of the town's businesses, or not the businesses, but of the town's records. So we can get a better sense of like where things are and where we're going, especially if we're going to have to ask taxpayers for more money. And
Yeah,
the example.
I watched that meeting.
Okay, good. Do you have any opinion on that? Like, what do you think? Good idea, bad idea?
In terms of having an audit done, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Okay.
The only thing I worry about, Tony, I think I said this before, is given the cost, I think the scope has to be very well defined, focused, and limited. Like specific questions.
The auditors are good auditors. If they're doing a forensic audit, they'll tell you, like, you guys have got to make this scope really narrow. And I think that one of the things that we could work on leading up to a special town meeting is narrowing that scope so that we have a better idea of what we're going to say to them when we go to a special town meeting. Okay, does anybody have anything on that point?
Tony, if I might,
Sure.
I'm a little bit concerned from a PR standpoint and calling it a forensic audit. Most people associate that with wrongdoing. Is there some other way we could characterize that without doing that term?
I think you can call it whatever you want. The reason I call it a forensic audit is because when I reached out to the experts that I knew did this kind of thing, that's what they called it. So like you can call it whatever you want, but I don't think it matters. The point is I just want them to be able to do something more than like the compliance audits that we do now. I want like the thing that haunts me every time we talk about this is Renee's miscellaneous, non-recurring $300,000 that disappeared. And I don't think it's wrongdoing at all, but I think if we're going to go to the voters and say, hey, we need more money, we need to at least be able to say where the money that they have given us has gone. And right now, when we have really vague descriptors like miscellaneous non-recurring funds, and you couple that with the fact that we have not had people in accounting positions in the town until very recently, both on the town side and the school side. You know, one of the attacks that I think an opponent would make is like, you guys don't even know what you're doing. You don't even know if you need money because you can't find the money. And it's like, that's kind of true. So yeah, I think you can call it whatever you want, just as long as the scope of it is well defined enough to make sure that they're not thinking that this is like a compliance audit. Like we don't need somebody to check our temperature. We need to have somebody to like dig into the history and figure out where that stuff went. Though,
Diagnostic.
yeah, that's fine.
Sticking with a medical kind of.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that I will say is when I went to talk to Muir about the library, he told me the story of how they found that money, that the Board of Trustees found that money, and somebody had donated it in like the 1850s. And it had just
1850s?
1850s. It was like 1850, 1860. And they had set up this money for the library. And it had just sat there and no one knew it existed. And they found it. And it was like, because it had sat there for so long, it was like a substantial sum of money. You know, I can imagine like some very thrifty Yankee who we all know and love and is probably our neighbor, donated like, 1/10 of all of his proceeds at the end of his life to the town of Lunenburg's library. And it was like $100, which is like a fortune back then. And it just sat in an account and gained interest. And, like that coupled with your example, Renee, tells me like, we need to figure out what we're spending money on and where our money is. I think part of this is going to happen naturally when we adopt the prudent investor rule, because we're going to have to consolidate all those accounts into one. But at the same time, I still think we need a pretty thoroughgoing analysis. Does that seem fair, Carter?
Absolutely. I mean, I have no problem with the concept. I'm just a little gun shy over the term. Diagnostic, I think's great.
Or investigative, something, I don't know.
Yeah,
Deep
anything
dive.
detailed, whatever you want, deep dive. Yeah, I just put that out for their consideration. That's all.
Is there anything else we want to talk about on this topic? So going on to the next thing, information on the Town Health Insurance Committee. So I spoke to Mary. Mary is a fountain of information. I appreciate how much she knows and how broad her scope of knowledge is. So this is what she told me. I sent it as an email to Ezekiel, but I just wanted to clarify. So, and Carter, if this is wrong, or if there's something I misspeak about, tell me, because it's my fault and certainly not Mary's fault. My understanding is that the town of Lunenburg employees have something called a PEC, that other towns have something that functions similarly but not identically called the IEC. And these groups go about dealing with town employee health insurance. If you have a PEC, The decision of that group is mandatory, subject to the approval by the town. If you have an IEC, they're advisory. The other thing that Mary told me was the current incentive package to get people off town insurance is for $4,000, and it requires them to first having taken town insurance and then got off of it. So you only get the $4,000 if you were on it, and then for other reasons, you get off of it. You do not get it if you are a new hire and you don't take it. And Mary had 2 points about that. Number one, it seems like a backwards way to incentivize people because the town first has to incur the costs for a period of time and then have the person get away from it. The second thing she pointed out was the $4,000 was an incentive a while ago, but as costs have increased, especially for healthcare and insurance, it's less of an incentive. So the insurance benefits are really a powerful marketing tool for town positions, both on the town side and the school side. And if you want people to forego them, you're going to have to pay more than $4,000. And so I don't know what the numbers are, but we should look to see if the number of people who are disclaiming town insurance has increased or decreased or stayed the same. And if it's stayed the same or decreased, then we need to increase the incentive. But I also think that it's kind of crazy that they first have to take it and then get rid of it. Because if the point is we're saving money for the town by having them not be on it at all, then why are we first making them, it sounds like it's like the insurance equivalent of the hokey pokey, where like they have to put their foot in and then they take their foot out and then we reward them. Let's just not have them play the hokey pokey at all. That would be my perspective as a way to try to save some money. If the costs of health insurance are so high, let's just incentivize them from the outset of not doing any of that.
And Tony, is that incentive every year? Is that an annual or is that a one and done?
I think my understanding is that it's an every year thing, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I would expect it to be every year.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
makes sense.
So a couple things, if I might, Tony.
Yeah,
it's an
sure.
IAC, Insurance Advisory Committee.
Yep.
Your description, however, was accurate. A PEC is mandatory, and that is what you have, a PEC. I'd have to go back and check with Mark Terry, but last time I had a conversation with him about this. Once you're in, you're basically in. There's no easy way out of the PEC process. Secondly, you may be right. 4,000 is pretty lean these days. I've seen other communities as low as 2,000, but I've also seen them as high as 6,000. That's kind of the band, and we could certainly do a quick and dirty survey on that to find out. I'd have to look at your collective bargaining agreements. It should be every single year. However, in one recent negotiations, it was in fact only once in the 3-year life of the contract. So we changed that to make sure it was annually. And that we can check pretty easily against your existing collective bargaining agreements. Now on the other, an important note is you don't let them opt out if you're paying their health insurance through some other associated entity. So for instance, let's say that you have a couple that's one's in the school department and one's on the town side. You make it clear that the person on the town side can't opt out if the person on the school side is in the program. Or let's say they work for an associated entity, Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District, MRPC, one of the tech schools that you're a member of. You don't want to pay somebody to opt out if they're taking the insurance in some other entity that you're paying for those costs anyways. Finally, I want to address the idea of opting out. The reason that most towns require you have been in the program was it wasn't meant to be a bonus pay for someone coming in to the work pool. And you can't opt out if you weren't in. Now, I understand completely your point of view, but that is how this came to be. So I'm just sharing history with you here, hopefully more than tub thumping a point of view. So I wanted to share that with you. But we could certainly check on a couple of these things with our peer communities to give you a sense of what's going on out there, if you'd like us to do that.
I do think that would be handy because it seems to me that insurance is not only a very large amount of money, but it's also the most volatile amount of money. And it's the one that comes in latest in the budget process. So if we could do everything we could to lower the amount of money, it would reduce the impact in terms of volatility and its late disclosure date.
Okay,
And
we'll do that research. It'll probably take us about 2 weeks or so.
Okay.
Especially given what else is on Julie's plate, but we'll get that done.
Carter, what I appreciate the origin story of the opt-out rule, but my question is, does it have to be that way by law? Because I don't know, but in
You do
New
not have
Hampshire,
to offer, you do not have to offer an opt-out program. There is no requirement as to how one would establish that program. So that becomes a policy of the community. And then you have to look at each individual bargaining unit to see if it is somehow enshrined in those collective bargaining agreements.
but we could, in theory, offer them a bonus without them first being in.
Yes, you could, subject to any language that's in each individual collective bargaining agreement that may have already locked a process in.
And if we do that, would we save money?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. The other thing you have to be extremely careful of, and I'm pretty sure you do this with your current program, is to make sure you apportion it out. The city of Worcester, the first time they offered it, they paid people in one lump sum, and then people retired or left them, and there was no way to claw it back. I think right now you pay it in conjunction with the paychecks on a biweekly basis, don't you? Do you know offhand?
I do not know. I do actually believe it's on biweekly, but I can verify.
Dr. Gilson, do you know how the school does it?
You're on mute.
Thank you. I do not know at this time. So I will be
I can-
finding out. Yeah.
I can
you?
jump in here.
Yeah.
The payout of the 4,000, that does not come from the school department budget. So if there's a school employee that has taken the opt-out, that comes through the town.
Okay.
The town pays the opt-out, but the school pays the health insurance if they don't opt out. Is that
That's what
right?
I understand.
Back to the discussion
I mean,
about,
the benefit to the school department is that if the employee comes off of the health insurance, that we're no longer
Yeah.
picking up that piece.
I will say I did get a copy of the policy this morning, and it says you have to be active on the insurance for 2 years before you can opt out.
Oh, wow.
Well,
And it's the individual coverage is 2,000, the family coverage is 4,000.
certainly, Tony, 2 years could be brought down to 1 year at a minimum, I would suggest.
what's the negative What's the trade-off between having no waiting period on the opt-out versus having a waiting period?
The trade-off is that when you do that initial hire, the employees look at their costs versus potentially a spouse's costs, and they make the initial decision based upon which of the two people will have the best net impact upon them. They're going to make that decision anyways. So if the net impact on the couple is that it's the other partner who has the best program, you're paying somebody to opt out of a plan they weren't going to enroll in the first place.
Excuse me, I'm just reading through this. I got, the opt-out incentive payments are paid at the end of the fiscal year.
In a
Not
lump,
by, they were paid out at the end of the fiscal year and not bi-weekly.
well, there's another incentive approach that we could look at. To apportion it so that people see a more immediate impact. Is the idea, Izzy, that if they aren't with you the whole year, you aren't giving it to them at all?
I
You're
believe
not
so.
apportioning it?
Yeah, I had asked Julie for some more background information. She hadn't gotten back to me yet, but
Okay.
the document came from Nancy. I'll add it to the Google Drive for everybody.
So you're paying retroactively then on the previous year, so leaving early. The town doesn't have to claw anything back, but the question is, does the employee get any prorated incentive if they leave mid-year?
Not if you're paying it all at the end of the fiscal year. What I'm hearing is a 12 months and done or none.
Actually, there's another bullet in here. Mid-year opt-outs will be prorated.
Oh, okay. But the prorating only happens by reducing your amount. It doesn't get spread out.
Yes.
Okay.
That's just opting out. That's not if an employee leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Carter and Ezekiel, one thing that Mary told me, and I think this is true, is that we have really good insurance. And so if our concern is that we are incentivizing people to do something they would already do, that's like a theoretical problem. But if we have really good insurance, it doesn't sound like that's a practical occurrence, meaning like it probably doesn't happen that often. If we have good enough insurance to attract people to come to Lunenburg, despite lower pay, what are the chances that their spouse will have better insurance than we do? And so are we really in that conundrum where we're paying people to do something they would already do?
I'd have to say that's really hard to tell. That's really crystal ball gazing in my view.
But if we could compare ourselves to like another town and then compare ourselves to like a private entity that had the same number of employees and a similar size budget, and we see that, 1% of our people are opting out and 25% of the private industry or the comparable town is opting out, then we know that offering the incentive without first having them dip their toe in the water doesn't hurt us, right? I mean, we can.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we can do some research on relatively
Okay.
easily. This isn't, this is not really a horribly difficult task to tackle. It'll take us some time, given the other things that are on our plate, but we can certainly take this on.
And it would be interesting because if we can hit this cost harder, then, somehow I feel like with the insurance, the health insurance thing, because it plays such a critical role in the budget process, if we can save some money here, it might have an outsized impact. Like $1 here might be worth more than $1 someplace else because of the variability and the lateness in which the information is disclosed. So like, I don't know, if somebody came to me and said, rank the most important cost saving measures, the one that comes with our most volatile cost, I think should be higher. I don't know, is that the wrong way to think about it? I mean, people
Well,
that do money, Ezekiel.
Respectfully,
Dr.
I have to
Gilson,
disagree that it
Carter.
comes late in the process. You know, by December trend, general industry trend across the municipalities in Massachusetts. You generally know by the third to fourth week in January what your specific are going to be, and you can sometimes even know a little bit earlier, depending upon your relationship with your Meyer representative. So, it's not that this is something that comes in May after you start working on your budget. I think it's due into the select board February. I don't know. I'm thinking it was 13 on the calendar that I'd looked at. We know the number. It's not that deep into the budget season, in my view.
When we did the budget last year, it really messed us up. And I don't know if last year was an anomaly, but we got that information. I don't know if it was later than February, but it felt like we had already done 5 or 6 different iterations of the budget. And we were already aware that it was going to be a problem. And then when we got the news that it was only 5.5%, everybody kind of jumped for joy a little bit.
I think last year, a big part of the problem was the initial preliminary numbers we were given, indication we were given was it was going to be double-digit increase.
That's right. That's right.
And so everyone panicked and based all the budgets on this really high number. And at the end of the day, when we finally got the number, it was more in line with what you would typically expect.
And that trend number is what you usually get in mid to late December, and the real number is what you usually get in mid to late January.
Yeah, I think everyone got really spooked last year with the 10% or more increase. And with health insurance, and it is so volatile and unpredictable for everybody. I mean, so I don't know what to expect this year with the preliminary. I mean, you hope if the preliminary comes in high, that's not going to be the actual, but that's a gamble. I think if you assume it's going to be in line every year.
So setting aside whether it was early or late, Carter and Ezekiel and Dr. Gilson, do you think it makes sense to try to more aggressively pursue these options, like the high deductible health insurance plan, changing the amount for the incentive, and changing the rule for the opt-out? Does that make sense given what you guys do on a daily basis? Will it have an impact on the bottom line?
I think it makes sense. Not being here historically, I couldn't tell you the impact on the bottom line, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, I too couldn't tell the impact from the bottom line, but I do think it makes sense.
I absolutely think it makes sense. And every year, now you've got a PEC, which is more challenging than an IAC. But every year when we get those rates, Tony, I've usually also talked with the representative, and let me just use some examples, and they're not specific proposals. So please, nobody viewing this think we're suggesting we do exactly what I'm going to give you as an example. But let us say that a emergency room copay, and I don't know what yours is right now, is $50. The town saves money and the employee saves money if that goes to 100. So we then talk about the frequency of that occurrence. And in some communities, if we have money left in the insurance budget at the end of the year, we actually make a payment to the employees and we say, okay, we recognize that when this goes from 50 to 100, here's a payment we're giving you to offset those future costs on your back. And here's what your premium is going to be. It's going to be a smaller premium increase. And so we often look at those kinds of things, and they're kind of torturous. You nibble around the edges. They don't yield tremendous amounts of money, but it is a kind of, in my view, a practice you need to follow each and every year, working with your PEC, trying to find just those little low-hanging fruits that perhaps folks might be able to sign on to.
I have a question about the process and the timing. Does it align and coincide with the open season? And when is it usually? November? Any change in healthcare plans offered by the town?
So November is your open enrollment for your seniors, your Medicare supplement plans.
Yeah,
And your open enrollment for your, what we call active employees, tends to be in May. And so you get your rates in, let's just say February 1 for illustration. You then do have some time to work with your employees and your carriers to determine if there's a little bit of, copay maneuvering that you might do that. Now, they don't do it just for the heck of it. We have taken that surplus money in the insurance account and paid them something towards that. So there are some different ways to do it, and it's work. I mean, it's because the minute you start touching somebody's health insurance package, and it is a good package, and the town certainly has done well by its employees on that front. You can also look at adjusting the retiree contribution rate. That can be controversial also. In one town, we raised it from 10 to 40. 1 percentage point a year. It's going to take 30 years to get to the new rate. Because that was the only way to get it through the select board. In one town, it's being raised from 25 to 40, again, over 15 years, 1 percentage point a year. So these are just some examples of what some communities have done.
It strikes me as an easier sell to tell people that we're going to save money by offering an incentive than it is to say, we're going to save money by making you pay more. Like, to the extent that people are staying, it's not because they're being offered competitive salary, but from what Mary told me, the health insurance is a real selling point. And so if we're not going to be able to increase townwide salaries a ton, then increasing the insurance costs to make it worse seems like we're burning the candle at both ends.
You have to remember the employee is saving also. If that policy goes up $100, what are you, 25.75, is he?
Yes.
So if that policy goes up $100, they're paying 25. If that policy goes up 80, they're paying 20. So if you can find a copay that they're not going to incur frequently and provide some upfront offset and then the annual savings, it can be a winning combination, Tony. The other thing you can do is put it out to bid. The challenge is once you leave Maya, you can't get back in for 2 years.
It's Maya. This is the Massachusetts
Interlocal Insurance Association, I think it is. So some towns have put it out to bid, picked a lower provider, or joined a regional group benefit, like I think, God, not Dunstable. It's not Dunstable. I forget, Pepperell, Carver, I think, are in one of them. But if you do leave Maya, like I said, you can't get back in for 2 years, so you're at the mercy of the insurance carrier in year 2.
Do you have any sense of what the employees would want in terms of these proposals?
Leave everything alone.
But like Mary seemed to be pretty clear to me that the incentive, if the incentive was higher, it would be better.
Yeah, and certainly we'll look at other communities and see what they're paying, and then this group can make some recommendation to the select board.
Tony, I think Mary did, and I just forget, she comment on Brian's proposal?
Yeah. I mean, she basically said they don't really care. It's probably not going to have an impact because, again, one of the selling points of the town is the insurance. She was not thrilled with the idea that it would be put in place because if it were put in place, it would serve as a possible point to dilute the strength of the group and the insurance benefit itself. So I think she was like negative to ambivalent.
I thought the idea was to give it as another option, not to replace the existing.
Oh, I know. Yeah, she
Okay.
knew that, but she's just concerned
Okay.
that if there's another option, that it'll be a Trojan horse to push people over there, which I don't think that's a bad concern to have, quite frankly. I mean, if you like what you have and somebody says, how about something else? You're always like, I like what I have. You could offer creme brulee to a 3-year-old, but if they've had chocolate pudding every night, they might not take it. So
That's fine, they don't have to, but other people
Yeah.
might.
Yeah, I mean, I see Mary's perspective. It's always concerning when people start mucking around with health insurance. Like my feeling about offering the high deductible health insurance plan is that it is something that really sophisticated people, or really people that are really sophisticated in understanding finances and risk, that they will use, and it'll be a very small percentage of people. But for the majority of people, I think Mary is right. And the example about the chocolate pudding speaks to how primal the need is to have certainty about your health insurance. So I think we should recommend doing it. I just don't think that there will be a lot of people that will take you up on that offer because you're basically saying, like, all of the people that went to Chicago School of Economics, knock yourself out. And then the rest of us are like, I don't want to deal with that. It's too complicated. I have good insurance. Leave me alone. But I don't think it hurts anything to offer it.
Mhm.
We have a meeting with the Maya reps next week, I believe it is. I'll bring it up with them as to what their policy would look like. And see if we can get them to cost it out.
Does the PEC participate in that meeting too, Carter?
Not the initial ones, no.
Okay.
Usually it's a brief to give us a sense of what the market direction is and to see from us what we might want to do in terms of offerings. And then we maybe send them back to the drawing board to give us some additional information, and then we start meeting with the PEC. And I need to talk with Mark and Julie about what is the history of your PEC here in Lunenburg.
If you need any recounting of the history of the town, Mary knows. Only Peter Beardmore can rival her in towny knowledge. So she's got a lot of history too.
Mhm.
I had no idea that the health insurance was as complex as it is, and I'm glad that we took a look at it because it wasn't something that was on the agenda, but it just like popped up organically, and it makes a lot of sense to think about it. And I think that getting that information on what the incentive is, what the rules are for other towns in terms of opt-out, and the percentage of opt-outs taken in Lunenburg versus comparable towns or businesses will hopefully give us some idea of whether or not increasing the incentive will save us money in the long run. So Carter, thank you for being willing to take that on. Is there anything anybody else wants to talk about in terms of information for the town? Or insurance for the town? All right, so I sent to Ezekiel the draft of talking points. We've already talked about them a little bit because Carter pointed about the language for the audit. But for the people that haven't seen it, I'm trying to get it down to a page because I don't want to take a lot of time. And I don't think that the special town meeting is the best place for this conversation. I kind of wanted to make it like an advertisement for what we've done and a request for suggestions and ideas. So I've written down like the 12 discrete things that we are going to end up recommending based on our conversations. From the converting to the new investment philosophy as allowed by law, consolidating investment counts, reducing duplicative work on POs between the town and the school.
Can you share it, Tony?
What? Oh, sure.
Are you
Sure,
able
sure,
to
sure.
share?
Yeah, let me see.
Thanks.
I can do this.
Tony, is this something you're looking to get into the voter information booklet that we'll be mailing out?
I don't know. I don't even know how anybody envisioned Ezekiel and I doing this.
I think you have to sing it.
Oh yeah, Ezekiel and I will get like those like old timey hats like the guy from the
Yeah,
monorail
yeah,
episode on
like
The
a-
Simpsons.
Yeah.
But I'm not dancing. I'm not dancing.
We'll just come
Oh, but
down
you'll
the
sing?
aisles, right? Come down the aisle singing and dancing.
Well, you could do it in barbershop quartets, or
Yeah,
it has to be barbershop duo style.
Can somebody who's the host let me screen share?
Yes, hold on. I am the host and I am, you've got you should have the screen share now. Great, perfect. I can see it.
Yeah, consolidate school and town snow removal and ground maintenance. Increase town fees, increase school fees with sliding scale based on free lunch status. Review and improve solar panel fund generation. Determine the viability of solar panels in the school parking lots. Pursue grants for LPS phase 2 and 3 of the air conditioner and Turkey Hill phase 1. Update warrant delivery to electronic methods to save money and add time with paper available on request. Offer high deductible health insurance plan. And this one was a draft because I just talked to Mary and I didn't want to forget it. Increase health insurance buyouts, or we can change the rules of the opt-out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Number
Tony?
5.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we could increase town fees, but the data shows that we've already increased them pretty significantly the past few years.
Good.
It was looking at DLS, I mean, again, only up to FY23, a 46% increase in fees from FY19 to FY23.
What if we said continually review appropriate fees for tax services or something along that lines? We did have the ambulance as one example where it hadn't been looked at in 10 years. And we talked about trying to make it part of the budget
Yeah.
process to put these on some sort of rotation.
Yeah.
So by talking about reviewing them, we could be saying the same thing without saying increase.
Alarming people.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because we did increase, was it this year, last year, boy. Some of, Brian Gingras presented some of the inspection fees and permit fees and stuff like that we were way low. And so we did bump those up recently. There's something else we could put on here. We may
don't
be able
wanna-
to get more Chapter 90 funds by accepting some town roads. We found there were some town roads that I think the town has been maintaining that aren't officially accepted as town roads. And so if we had more town roads, that would factor into the getting more Chapter 90. Is that accurate, Carter?
It is.
I think actually some of them we have accepted. We just can't find the documentation showing we accepted.
So, yeah, so we might have to go through a layout process, but we do need to
Yeah.
nail that down. Similarly on the increased health insurance buyout, I think if we, were to talk about reviewing the entire program, from the amount of time you have to be out. And I don't want to drop a bomb here at all, but I do think, and I don't know whether you want to include it at this point or not, on my tick list of items to submit to the group, whenever that's appropriate, is a complete and total review of your trash disposal program. I think you got considerable money on the table there that could be dealt with by private entities. I don't want to put a number on it, but I do believe it's, well, I'm not going to put a number on it other than to say I think it's considerable.
Carter, do you think that's tied to going to the CART program?
I think you got to look at everything. I mean, you want to maximize the reduction in your town expenses, go out of the business. I really think you need to look at all the aspects of this and pick the approach that is best. There are communities that are larger than you that don't provide a localized trash service at all.
Can somebody get me up to speak? 'Cause I know that this was something that Carter presented to select board. I have not had the chance to go back and watch that meeting.
Well, what I've suggested is that over the next 3 years of this contract, a working group of people be put together to look at what are the costs to the town and the costs you would have to charge to the customer to continue the program in its current status. You may not be able to find a vendor who's willing to do it. What might the cost be if you were to convert to the carts? It can reduce labor costs. And by that, it's more automated. The carts are loaded, rolled out to the curb, and then a man puts them onto the hooks and they're emptied. You could look at establishing a transfer station. You could look at trying to buy access to some of your surrounding communities. You could look at going out of the business. I just have suggested that a top to bottom review of all the possibilities be considered over the next couple of years to put you in a position to decide how best to proceed. It's not the cost of the carts so much, Renee. Those are 80, let's call them $100 plus or minus. It's the different kind of truck that you have to use.
Oh, yeah, I have carts here. We have private here that pick it up, and I'll tell you, I was at a gathering this weekend, and someone was complaining about having to pay for garbage bags. We pay taxes. Why are we paying to have our garbage bags for the trash? So to get rid of trash pickup, I mean, that was a handful of people saying that, but they're out there.
Garbage and dogs will bring out your
Yeah.
citizens to a public hearing unlike anything you've seen.
If we went to the cart system, would we still have to pay for bags?
No,
Oh my. I like this idea.
I could tell in Maynard, we had stickers that we put on. It was $4 for a big green, barrel. I don't know, what is that, a 32 gallon or something? So for me, that was, I mean, I had one barrel a week. It was $4 a week. It's nothing. It was $2 when I first moved there. I don't know what bags cost here because I don't have to use them.
When
I think they're 3.25 or 3.50. I'll get you the answers for that.
I know there's two sizes. I can just ask my dad. He because you get them in a roll and you have to calculate how much. But yeah, we have E.L. Harvey does the cart pickup.
So
Yeah.
what's the downside for the cart pickup, Carter?
Cost?
What do you mean? Like, so why would we do it if it costs more?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that you look at all of the options so that when you have the discussion, you can include the community and they know that you did in fact look at all of the options. I think the worst thing that happens is when any committee makes its report and then starts getting peppered with, did you think of this? It's so much nicer to be able to say, yes, we did, and here's the answer, as opposed to, no, we didn't.
Did your presentation have anything to do with the recycling, which used to be free and we're now paying for it?
I don't think there's a charge for recycling, is it? Did I miss?
no. Okay.
The town used to get
Oh,
the
oh.
taken away for free, and now the town pays
Oh.
for it.
We didn't get into real detail on it. I think we, have had a conversation on one or two occasions as this pricing was coming in. But no, we did not get into great detail on it.
Is there anything else we should put on this list of bullets?
I think a question that might get asked, probably will get asked, is how much the ones that are potential cost savings, maybe break them out into increased revenue and potential cost savings. The ones that are potential cost savings, people may ask, well, how much are we talking about nickels? We talking about, coin or paper money? What's the scale of savings? And I don't know that we know the answers for all of them, but
I
just
understood
because
this
they
to be
might-
more
yeah.
of a, I understood this to be more of a midterm status report than a,
Yeah, I think it's just to get people. I saw later in the report, Tony, you had, we've only had 2 members of the public attend any of the meetings. So it's an opportunity, I think, to get exposure to other members of town and possibly ideas.
What I really want, we went to New York this weekend, and we went for Comic-Con because I have a little guy who loves Japanese cartoons and another little guy who likes art. And seeing the brilliant ideas that have been implemented in that city to make the city nicer. Like one of the things was the Hudson Avenue or the Hudson area spurway. It was like an elevated train. It kind of fell into disrepair. And somebody had a brilliant idea of making it a park. And so there's this walkable park, 55 feet off the ground through a large portion of Manhattan. And it's unbelievable. And it struck me as such a brilliant idea that I don't think I think that was something I would have never even conceived was possible. And if somebody out there has an idea like that, like, geez, please help us.
Mm-hmm.
the High Line was driven by private citizens. It was not driven by the government of New York City.
Have you seen it, Carter? I mean, it is just, it is spectacular.
I lived in East Harlem for a couple years and we walked it often.
Oh, it was just incredible. It's just the nicest. It's a really brilliant idea. All right, so I've moved these around. I think I'm almost there.
Did we
Uh,
want to bring up the tax rate at all?
I do.
I don't know. Evan didn't get a chance to talk to Linda or Brian.
Oh, the split tax rate.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll have an opportunity to talk with them at all.
And then, like we could. I mean, no one's gonna see this document. It's Ezekiel and I singing. So no one will see the document about high, and I think we could just say something like, some of these are, likely to produce more money than others.
As long as you're singing in harmony, Tony.
Okay.
Izzy, do you know if the LA4 was approved today?
I have not heard that had been. I know it's being reviewed.
That's
I haven't gotten
key
a notice.
for us submitting our interim property values to DLR for certification. Once that's done, we then use that data to get our new growth certified. So it has been submitted, and once that's approved, we can then submit the new growth for certification as well.
Yeah, I heard at the last Board of Assessors meeting that the state is way behind.
It's the appraisal firms across the state that are way behind. Hopefully the state DOR itself will be able to go through the submissions relatively quickly, but the pipeline is getting more in it at one time than we would like to see.
So this is where we talk about a full and diagnostic audit of the town's finances. The review process, the task force uncovered a number of issues that, if properly resolved, could provide more revenue to the town. Additionally, because of long-term staffing, we need to be guaranteed of a more sure financial footing. I don't know how to put that, but I think that, like, from my perspective as a person that just moved into town, we have not had both Dr. Gilson and Ezekiel's positions filled at the same time until recently. There's always been somebody in transition, something moving, and then they were both not filled. And I don't want to imply that anybody's done anything bad, but in all that chaos, it's hard to keep track of things. I kind of feel like, and Carter, if this is an unfair comparison, but because municipal politics is so local, it often feels like the writing on the bathroom stall and graffiti, like whoever is there writes something new and different. So that at the end of the day, you sit down in that stall and there's like 60 different kinds of handwriting, and there's 60 different kinds of accounting and 60 different names for things, so that you end up with miscellaneous non-recurring funds and no one knows what it is.
I think it's 50 ways to leave your lover, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what people want to do, but I think that we are going to have to tell people, like, we're probably going to have to raise taxes if we want to keep the town the same. And I go into a little bit of a historical explanation for Prop 2.5. And then, like, somebody explained it to me this way, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. If you are only allowed to increase property taxes by 2.5%, and the only way that a town could generate revenue outside of miscellaneous fees is property taxes, when inflation increases faster than 2.5%, you're actually reducing funding for the town. And that's our fundamental problem, that inflation has made 2.5% insufficient. And so a lot of towns understand that and they vote for overrides on a more regular basis. And we need to do that here. I know this is not going to be well received, but it's
Tony, so that you're not called to question on your representation of Prop 2.5, it is the 2.5 of your prior year. But it's also the new growth. I think, you know, I don't think you want to turn this into, you know, anything too lengthy, but I do think you need to get that concept of new growth in there so that at least you've stated it.
main source of revenue to the town, 2.5%. Increase in property taxes. So where would you put it? Right here, increase in property taxes.
Plus the value of any new construction, I guess you could.
Yeah, I want to be.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, we list all of those revenue generating cost savings items at the beginning. The point of them is to try to minimize or even eliminate the need for an override.
Or to elicit new ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am really hesitant to state with any kind of confidence that, yeah, another override this year. It's happening. Get ready. It could happen. I'm not ready to commit to it at this point. And because I think that would cause unnecessary turmoil. I don't know what to call it.
And this is because these towns see Prop 2.5 for what it is, the minimum necessary funding for a town. It is the floor, not the ceiling. And so I wrote, and right now, after a period of steep inflation, we need to go above the floor and fund our town at appropriate levels. Is that too on the nose, Renee?
I mean, I know, like I think last time you mentioned Weston has like an override every year, every other year. I mean, my God, we are not Weston,
No, no.
and it's just not sustainable.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is just PR approach. Why can't we keep it simple of we don't want you're all residents there for the most part, taxes on our homes to go up any more than you do. And so this budget task force was created to try to brainstorm all the ways in which we could improve our non-tax revenue stream and all the ways that we could more effectively and more cost effectively deliver our services to you. And so here's some of the things we've talked about in terms of revenues. Here's some of the things we've talked about in terms of expenses. Good golly, Miss Molly, we sure probably missed a bunch of stuff. We would love you to participate, to send us those ideas. And just keep it simple, not get into an explanation of 2.5 and it's not enough. And I'm just trying to think with a PR hat on, Tony.
Well, I also think it helps keep it simple because I think at the end of the day, people, they don't want to give up. They want their cake and eat it too. They don't want to give up services, but they don't want to pay more in taxes. Like we just talked about trash. I don't know if everyone would want to have a transfer station. Some people would look at that as a loss of service, and others would look at it as great. It gives me more flexibility.
Especially those that already hire private haulers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just even looking, again, we want to look beyond this year too. Like we're looking at a lot of big projects coming we're looking at, you know, are we gonna have borrowing? Are we gonna have some debt exclusion overrides? I mean, all right at the other group giving a report at special town meeting is municipal building design. We don't even know what the dollar figure is on that.
All right. I dropped all the 2.5% because I think that's you guys.
I just don't want people throwing tomatoes at you, Tony.
Oh, I don't care. Renee, for a living, I go in front of a jury and try to defend people who have done terrible things. I'm used to getting
I thought you only defended the innocent, no?
my clients are innocent. It's all the other
Yeah.
people who are defense
Yeah.
lawyers that take crappy cases that have guilty clients, but I get
Yeah.
lumped in with them just like everybody else. All right. I think that's fine. Like I'm not wedded to anything here. I just want it to be an accurate reflection of the things that we've considered so that people could see we're really trying. We've gone
We're
through this.
trying. I mean, I think that's key. It's not easy, as everybody here knows.
You know, Tony, on the Green Communities proposal, it's not just for AC, it's, you know, heating, it's for the heating and the AC, for the units that we're looking at. And, yeah, and they're sizable amounts of money, well, sizable meaning that we just applied for the phase 2 grant for $225,000 on Friday. So anyway, and key to the connectivity is basically there's a controller that sets the heating temperature and sets the cooling temperature for the entire building for all of those aspects of the Green Grant.
That's awesome. It's really good.
Yep.
And Dr. Gilson, I'm taking my phone number away from you.
Well, yeah, but listen, Carter, I appreciate, being able to contact you because I didn't know we were going to have that need on Friday afternoon. So thank you.
Is there anything else anybody thinks we should put in here?
I think that's all I had.
So action items for next meeting. Should we have somebody from the PEC come and talk to us so that we're not doing this I heard from this person kind of thing?
When is our next meeting?
It's the last one before the special town meeting. I know that.
Is it the day before?
I think it is.
Tony, can I
Oh,
talk with
no,
town
it's not.
council before we invite the PEC in, please?
Sure.
Oh, maybe it's the week before, the 4th. Is that right?
Yep, 4th.
Okay.
I'll get that note off to them tomorrow, Tony, and we'll get started on the buyout research.
Okay. That'd be really great. I think that, the insurance thing is so important to so many people. And it's such a kick in the teeth budgeting wise. It'd be really nice if we could, have some more cost savings there. I just always feel like it's the last thing you ever want to have to muck with. So, okay. So next meeting, the only thing I could think of is that we pin down more on the health insurance stuff. And, then we would have, do you think that garbage information is more interesting than what you've already shared? Is there more stuff out there? All right. I'm not interested in having long meetings. We don't need to have long meetings.
The next meeting, I believe Brian and Linda for the assessors
Oh, yeah.
board. I think I had extended the invitation ahead next week by accident, but I think they're in line for the 4th if we want to share the
Okay.
agenda with them.
That'd be cool. So the classification hearing, we're probably looking at the 19th then?
Well, we're trying for the 5th, but it is probably more realistic for the 19th based upon the finance team meeting of last Wednesday. A lot of it will have to do with how quickly the state turns around that property data we sent them on Thursday.
And is the timeline for new growth certification the same? Or is that a separate?
It's, you have to
Timeline.
get the existing property values certified first, that's the LA4. Then you can
Uh-huh.
submit your new growth. And then you have your total values that you can proceed with.
So we probably won't have those by special town meeting, I'm guessing. The new growth.
I can give you a better answer tomorrow night.
All right. Is there anything we need to talk about in the past? Are there any public comments? Gene, thank you for coming. I told you, you're gonna have a great time. Especially when you see Ezekiel and I's dress rehearsal. We will be just like the monorail guy from that episode of The Simpsons.
If the Yankees win the World Series, Ezekiel's gonna be dancing on stage.
I wear a Yankees uniform.
Oh, there you
Yes!
go.
Yes, that would be awesome. That would be so good. That would make me root even for the Yankees. All right. Well, if that's it, I say we adjourn and get going.
So
Thank
moved.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
You
Good
too.
night.